The fetus doesn't intentionally come about. You caused it to come about. When you go outside and somebody else rapes you, that's not, that person is making the decision to do it. So these are not analogous. These are totally disanalogous situations. Tyranid, what you got for me, buddy?
Oh, okay. Hey, so just two things I wanted to talk about. Starting on abortion. So, can we both agree the fetus has a right to life, right? That's kind of like your starting premise.
I guess, sure.
Okay, so would you then agree that the right to life doesn't guarantee having the right to be given the use of or like continued use of another's body?
Yeah.
Okay, so then why wouldn't the woman then have the moral authority to be able to revoke consent from the fetus at any point in the pregnancy?
Because it seems like when you engage in the acts, when you engage in sexual acts, you kind of accept that there is some risk that you're going to bring about the existence of a life that will be relying on you.
But so when you're engaging in those sexual acts, you're not necessarily consenting to pregnancy, even though that's a risk, right? Like people engage in sexual acts for all sorts of reasons that don't necessitate pregnancy.
I mean, if somebody wants to drunk drive, they're not necessarily engaging in the idea that they're going to kill somebody. Maybe they just want to get home or they think it's fun.
Yeah, but I think it's more akin to like owning a house, right? Like if I own a house, I know there's a risk of it being burglarized, but that doesn't mean I'm consenting to the burglar coming into my house.
Yeah,
right?
but these acts are disanalogous. Like a burglar is its own moral agent that's committing something that we would consider moral wrong. A fetus is kind of something that's not necessarily considering or doing this moral wrong with its own like agency, and like we wouldn't really consider that a thing.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But so then, like, I guess at what point would you be able to? So if you like take precautions though against like certain things happening to your house, let's say to like it being destroyed or like somebody coming into your house, maybe not even necessarily with like a negative moral decision, just somebody wanting to maybe like come in and reside within your house, you still are able to revoke consent from that, right?
It depends on how you revoke consent, and it depends on who the person is. Because in the case of an abortion, we're talking about killing somebody. Now, if an adult broke into your house with intentions to murder or steal your shit or whatever, you could probably kill that. If a 3-year-old broke into your house, do you think you should kill the 3-year-old?
But I don't think it's necessarily killing it. It's more of you're just not allowing it to stay in your house. The killing it's just a byproduct of this really special situation.
Okay, sure. So tell me what you think.
Is reliant.
Sure. So tell me what you think would be morally acceptable here. Let's say that you have a house. You're chilling inside. All of a sudden, a 3-year-old child wanders into your house. Say that it's like snowing a lot outside and it's freezing cold. Do you think that if you kick that child out into the cold, knowing that it's going to die in the blizzard, do you think that that's okay because he's in your house and you don't consent to it? You should be able to just kick him out into the street and he dies, and you're not like you're free of responsibility from that.
So I think that at the point where you're within society and there's like other options outside of just like kicking it out into the cold, where you can just like you take it out into the cold but then drive it to like the nearest gas station or drive it to like a fire station where they're able to then take it up for adoption would be the thing, right? Because there's like ways to abdicate responsibility once you have social constructs set up. But at the point
sure,
where
but let's say for the sake of the example, let's say it's a cabin in the middle of the woods and it's a guy that doesn't like to fuck with society and he's like, yeah, fuck all that shit. Like I don't do adoption or whatever, it's not available in this society or whatever, right? If they know that they kick the child out into the blizzard because it's infringing on their property, is that okay, even though the child's not like old enough to take care of itself or know anything about that? Would it be okay then if he didn't have an alternative, since the child is infringing on his property without like good reason or good cause, and it's a violation of his autonomy?
I guess like at that point it wouldn't necessarily be a good thing for him to do it, but it also wouldn't be like a moral wrong for him to just abdicate the responsibility of someone infringing upon him, right? Because he didn't like consent to that person coming into the house, so then when he's kicking them outside, he's just like not taking on special responsibilities.
Yeah.
So I guess the idea would be that whenever we're within a pregnancy, whenever you're saying that the woman immorally has to continue carrying the child, you're saying that that woman should take on like special moral considerations that we wouldn't give her in other situations. For example, like I think the classic example is a kidney donation, where you wouldn't say just because somebody is going to die because they're not going to receive my kidney, I don't have to give that person my kidney, even though it might be like a really good thing for me to do. I still have the bottle.
Well, yeah, so again, these are disanalogous. Let's say, for instance, that there are 3 people, okay? And let's say that 2 people want to go and have a fun activity, and there's like a 1% chance that if they engage in that activity, that the other person is going to need one of their kidneys. At that point, do you think you could compel one of them to donate the kidney? It's like, because I mean, you kind of caused it, like this was your thing, and you made it so that person needed a kidney. It was a really low chance, and you didn't want it to happen, but it did. Do you think at that point you could compel them, or do you think you say, fuck it, it was such a low percentage chance that that person's just unlucky and they die now?
Yeah, I think at that point it's again the idea of like special moral consideration where like you did something where sure there was a risk that you were going to have to become like dependent and give the person the kidney, but you aren't necessarily consenting to that act. So at the point where then they ask you for it, you still have the ability to withdraw or give consent at any point. And then after you've given consent, which I think would be analogous to the woman like giving birth to the child, that's at the point where you've taken on some kind of responsibility. Not just like, oh, there's a risk, there's a possibility, so now I somehow have more moral considerations. Like, it would be a really good thing if you did, but it's not like a morally necessitated thing. It's that kind of deal like, does ought equal should, right?
Wait, what? Hold on, wait, wait. So why? What's the difference between the two people and a kidney thing?
Hey, buddy.
Versus like the woman getting pregnant?
The two people in the kidney thing is fine. So like if I didn't hear exactly what your metaphor was, but there was some like risk, right?
Well, yeah. So two people are engaging in an activity, and it might make the third person need a kidney. Do you think that if they do that, and then because of their actions, the third person does need a kidney, even if it's a really low percentage chance, do you then think that that third person has like the moral authority to kind of say like, hey, you should give me a kidney because this is your fault?
No, because they still don't have the ability to trump the other person's right to bodily autonomy. Just because, even the drunk driving one was a good example. If the person gets in an accident and like injures somebody else, and they now need an organ transplant, you still cannot force that drunk driver to give up his organs to the person he injured because he still has that right to bodily autonomy that's trumping the right to life. Or it's not trumping it necessarily, but just like enacting the bodily autonomy means that the right to life is going to possibly be infringed on in that situation.
Yoink.
Hello?
I just yoinked the fuck out of this dude's key.
Oh, shit.
Okay, so you're saying that. What did we use the car analogy for again? Hold on, I'm trying to remember.
So you said that there was a drunk driver, right? And that he got in an accident and injured somebody else. And so what I was saying is that if you got in that accident and you injured the other person and now they need an organ transplant, you're not morally obligated to give him your organ because that's violating your right to life or your right to bodily autonomy, even if it's going to potentially infringe on his right to life. Now, it would be a really good thing if you did, but that's like special moral consideration. It's not like the baseline moral necessity of the person.
Actually, I'm not sure. Actually, I really like the idea of that. I've never thought about that before. If you get into an accident with somebody, actually, I feel like you would be obligated. If you got into an accident with somebody and it damaged both of their kidneys beyond repair and that person was going to die and you were the person that caused the accident, should you be compelled to be moral, maybe not legally or whatever, but from a moral sense, should you be compelled to donate one of your kidneys to them? I kind of think you should be. Otherwise, that person just dies even though you could have saved somebody with an inconvenience to yourself. Yeah, I kind of think you should be.
But so, okay, so I guess I would disagree at that level, but then let's even take it further and just say that, like, would you then apply that to every situation, or would you only apply it to situations where you were the direct cause of the person needing a transplant?
Probably, like, if you're engaging in behavior that's, like, has, like, a chance of causing, like, this kind of stuff to happen, then you should probably be willing to deal with the consequences of said stuff, I think.
So, like, if you have, like, parents who know that they're genetically predisposed to have a child who's going to have, like, renal problems, and they have that child, and now the child needs one of the parent's kidneys, is that parent obligated to give the child the kidney because he knew that there was a possibility of it, so now he has to, like, violate his bodily autonomy?
I kind of think so, yeah.
I think that's interesting.
Kind of like how, like, I would say, like, a parent is obligated if you want to carry a child to term that has, like, a severe, like, disability or something. I think that it should be on you to take care of them. If you knew that was going to happen, you did the amniocentesis or whatever, and you got it tested, and you knew that was coming. That it's kind of your responsibility to deal with that. That you kind of like, yeah.
But would you allow then the parent at that point to give up the child for adoption, or would you say like, no, this is now your obligation, you cannot abdicate those rights?
I mean, if there's other systems in place to deal with it, then I think it's a little bit different. Kind of like
which is why it gets tricky after birth.
Sure. Yeah, after birth it's a lot easier because we have other systems in play to deal with things. Sure.
I just think it's I guess the idea would be that it's like causing so many bodily, causing like potentially life.
Your mic is cutting out a lot. Sorry, hold on. Can you repeat everything you just said? Your mic cut out a ton there.
I think the idea... Is it still cutting out or is it good now?
It cut out a little bit again, but sorry, go ahead.
Damn, okay. I was just saying, I think that at the point where it's causing different bodily changes to her, so there's like negative repercussions of her carrying the child, that she should be able to withdraw that consent to the being pregnant just because there was like a small risk. Like, would you say if she used like different contraceptions, like she's on the pill and he used a condom, at that point, if she like took all the precautions she could to not have a child, would you say she still doesn't have any moral right to withdraw consent to the pregnancy?
I mean, you still know that there's a risk of it happening, no?
I mean, you do, but I guess the idea is that like consent to sex isn't necessarily consent to pregnancy, because people have sex for like all sorts of reasons outside of getting pregnant.
Well, but I
And
mean,
just
like,
'cause
it kind of is. Like, I mean, if you... I don't know if I agree with that premise that, like, if you consent to do something with a result that you know can happen, you don't consent to that result. Like, I feel like I would go back to my drunk driving analogy. I would make the same one. Like, just because I drive drunk doesn't mean I want to kill people, like, or I consent to killing people. Well, I mean, that's what's going to happen if you do that, right? Or you have to accept that there's a highly elevated risk of doing that, right?
Right, but I think like you can take actions post, like after the decision's been made, to try to like remedy what's happened. So I think like abortion would be one of those actions that you can take to try to say like, oh, I knew there was a risk and now I do not want to have this child because I can't take care of it, so I'm going to take like the action of abortion in order to like mitigate those risks that I knew could have happened.
Well, but you're
And I
saying
think
that no, your mitigation at this point is killing somebody. That's like saying I knew that if I drove drunk, I could hurt somebody. So after I get into a crash, I go to their car and I kill the person so that I don't have to deal with them being injured afterwards. I don't think that...
Well, I think it would be more like if you got in the accident and, well, I guess it goes back to the thing we said with the kidney. Like, would you be...
Stop, hold on. Oh my god. Okay, you're too smart for this, Unable Table, to make these dumb fuck arguments, okay? Getting mugged when you go outside or getting raped when you go outside are different things, because the other people acting here, you can assign blame to them. You can't assign blame to an unborn person, okay? The fetus doesn't intentionally come about. You caused it to come about. When you go outside and somebody else rapes you, that person is making the decision to do it. So these are not analogous. These are totally disanalogous situations. I don't know why you're complaining somebody raping you.
Which is why I said, like, you
oh, no, I'm not. There's people in chat saying real dumb shit. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, because like it's hard to make these analogies, because usually when someone infringes on your bodily autonomy, they have malice, right?
Yeah, or they have the intent to do it. That's why I use the analogy. But like we can look at real examples. So for instance, like a 40-year-old breaking into my house, I'm gonna treat that a lot differently than a 4-year-old breaking into my house, right? I'm not going to assume intent on that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but I think like in both situations, you have the ability to remove that person from your house. Like, say it's like a homeless man who just wants a place to live. He comes into your house. He has no malice in that, but you still have the right to like extradite him from your house because he's infringing upon your bodily autonomy. Or I guess if the house is akin to the body in this situation. And so it's just like you're withdrawing consent to someone else being there. And so like the results that come after you withdraw that consent aren't necessarily your fault or like your moral baggage.
Well, kind of, except, but we know what happens if you withdraw consent to the fetus. We know that it's going to die. God damn it.
Yeah, and so it's kind of just at that point where you know that the fetus is going to die when you withdraw consent. You have to like kind of take the Kantian categorical imperative of like applying it to other situations in society, which is why I was saying like there's no other situation where we're going to force somebody to give up their organ. Like even the ones you were talking about with the drunk driving, like I know that you're being like morally consistent, but I think that like for the rest of society, we would never structure it in a way to which that drunk driver was going to be forced to violate his bodily autonomy, right?
Well, we're talking about, we're appealing to societal norms now to make a moral argument. Morally, I actually would make that argument. I actually really like that idea, and I've never thought about it before. That if you got, and actually, I feel like even rhetorically, I feel like I could argue that very successfully, and no one would disagree with me. If you got into an accident and the other driver was like on the verge of death, and the only way he could be saved was a blood transfusion, and you happen to be like a matching blood donor, I think everybody, I'm appealing to society now, but I think everybody in society would condemn the fuck out of you if you're like, yo, whoa, I don't have to donate my blood to that motherfucker. I think everybody would hold that person morally responsible. They would go, dude, you got into an accident, you caused that person to get injured, and now you're not going to donate blood to save him? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I feel like most people would be like, okay, yeah, he definitely should do that, right?
Well, so then there's like different levels of obligation based on like the amount of time, I guess, it takes you to be able to meet that obligation. So like I think you're right if a pregnancy maybe took like an hour, right, or something that's really simple with a blood transfusion. But if you got in an accident and then you said the only way that this person can be saved is if we plugged you into him for 9 months, I think that the moral consideration would be different in that case. You wouldn't say that it's moral to say that that person has to do it.
I don't know if they would or not. If that other person caused that person to enter that condition, if it was their fault, 100% their fault.
So, like, even when you add on all the different layers of burden that it's going to put on the initial person, where it's saying, like, oh, you're going to be hooked up for 9 months, it'll cause bodily changes, but then afterward you'll be released. You'd still say that it's, like, moral to say you have to engage within that activity, even though you don't want your body being violated?
Yeah, if the alternative is the other person saying, "Well, sorry, that other person's just going to die because of your mistake, and it's your fault," but that other person's just going to die because we don't want to fuck with your bodily autonomy. Yeah, I think.
And so, like, what like, I guess, if is there any way to get deeper, do you think, in this moral consideration, where you're saying that, like on what, I guess, how are you making that moral evaluation that you're saying that it's okay, even though we're putting all of these burdens on?
Well, basically, I think that you probably shouldn't murder people. Is generally what I is generally my take, that you need like a really good reason. Well, it wouldn't be murder at that point, but like generally we probably shouldn't murder people in society, and that it looks like from the way that abortion works, it's probably murder, right? And so that's probably the thing we should avoid. And that's basically the entirety of the argument.
Yeah, I gotcha.
The
And then
concept of
so then
personhood
would
is
be,
arbitrary.
yeah,
And we
okay.
can
Hold on one
watch
sec,
more
7
intelligent humans and
million
animals all the time for
thing, donation
utility,
coming.
but from a rule utilitarian sense, wouldn't it just make sense to consider a human
Very
a
good, now I can't
person
hear you.
once they're born?
Sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, I don't. I guess the idea is that, like, you want to be able to give people as many options to be able to, like not consent to having that child before they have it. So, like, the first level of defense would be like all the like
Contraception?
preventative care we have. Yeah, contraception, all of that. But since there's always a risk when you're doing that and to have a pregnancy, that then the second level would be then to withdraw consent before you give birth and have that child. Because I think
Okay, that's
where
like
you,
a
have the
hardcore.
consideration.
Well, that's just a hardcore equivocation. You say like withdraw consent to have birth. You're saying murder the child, like is what you're saying at that point, right? I feel like you can't concede personhood and then like make it an argument, because your argument is always going to come back to, there's a way to take care of this. We just have to kill the kid. Well, I don't think that's a winning argument.
Well, it's withdrawing consent in both that situation and the one we talked about earlier, where you're plugged up to the person. If you say, I don't want to be plugged up to this person anymore, I would say that that person has.
Oh, sure, but that's fine. If
And
we
act
disagree
with their
there, then
body
that
how
could
they
be, then
want.
that's just the point we disagree on that we'll never agree on. Like, I would say that you could hold a
Okay.
person who's morally culpable for that person's state, that you could hold them like responsible to, help that person for 9 months so that they don't die. But if you disagree with that, which is fine. I mean, that's
Yeah.
either position. Yeah, I can see being argued. Yeah, sure.
All right, yeah, I'll think more about that issue of like how to argue that, because I think but I think this argument is a lot more productive than the typical one of like when the person is a personhood, because I think almost always the pro-life person wins that moral argument.
Well, yeah, but the problem is that if you grant personhood, you're basically coming up with reasons to murder someone, which is a really fucking hard bar to pass. In my opinion, I think that argument is almost unwinnable. I think it's better to try to define personhood as like consciousness or some other, like some of those arguments would be an easier way to do
But
it.
you would agree that we like grant people all rights until they start like infringing on others, and that's when we begin like pulling back rights. Like, it's a high bar to take away someone's right, right?
Well, yeah, but when the bar is you're murdering another person, that bar's been met, right? Like, if
But
me taking
I-
away some of your rights or granting you rights is going to lead to somebody else's death, then yeah, then that bar has been met. Even in our legal system, we kind of see that. Where,
But there's a distinction, right, between like murdering somebody and pulling away consent for use to the body, even if like the byproduct of that is that they're not viable to live without you.
I mean, like, there is a difference, but in this case, the difference is almost trivial, to borderline non-existent. So, like, for instance, like, if I were to walk by a pool and I see, like, a 2-year-old fall into the pool literally right next to me, and all I would have to do is just kind of, like, reach over and pull him up, and then I just watch that kid die for, like, 2 minutes, I think that you're at a level of, like, pretty high culpability there, when saving it would have been so easy. Although, to be fair,
And
like, giving birth to something isn't necessarily easy as well, right? Like it's 9 months of bodily changes and whatnot.
And that's why I was getting to the level of like we're like more responsibility with like short, like smaller things like that. Sure, I would completely grant that you would have the responsibility to do that. But do you have the responsibility to hold that person's like head above the water for 9 months, right? Like when you add on all these burdens, I think you can see the moral argument shift to the idea that you should be able to like not consent to those things happening to your body.
I guess it's just really hard when you've already consented to the initial idea that brought it about, and the way to get out of that once you've kind of get past that initial consent is to kill somebody. Like, I don't know, I feel like it's hard. But I mean, I don't think there's a hard right or wrong here, and that's why I don't debate this issue, and it's fucking cancer. And my policy position is to be pro-abortion anyway, so.
Yeah, no, like all the arguments, like if you're pro-life, you should be pro the number of abortions. Sorry, or can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I was saying I'm pretty sure if you're pro-life, you should be pro-legalizing abortion, because there's like a global gag rule where the U.S. will pull back funding from different areas, and so they'll have to stop abortions, and they see like net abortions increase in those areas because they don't have access to like education and contraception and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah, but okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about, so I was I don't know if you watch any of Steven Crowder's stuff. I kind of hope you don't. But I was on his one of his Change My Mind episodes, the Students Debate Part 1, where I did a gun control. Okay. And I got like a lot of pushback from that, with people saying that like, oh, I shouldn't engage with the right wing, like you're just helping them. I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
I mean, I feel like I've talked about this like a ton. I mean, I think if you engage with them in a responsible manner, if you're platforming good arguments and you feel like you're making good arguments, I feel like it's okay to do it.
Yeah, no, that's what I would agree with. Is the pushback was mostly just that, like, oh, you're somehow validating what they're saying by even engaging within the conversation if they're not going to engage with you on, like, a baseline reality.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to have the arguments at some point. I mean, at some point it'll probably be past the time for arguments, and then that's when revolution comes, comrade. But, yeah.
Very soon. Very soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. If you ever wanted to see that one, I would be interested to see what your take was. I argued gun control with a student at UT. It was kind of fun. He had us argue against another conservative student and then debate him.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of fun.
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah. Then if anybody who saw that, because I think it has like 3 million views at that point, wants to see I made like a little response thing where I laid out my case more. If you look up, I think like the Students Debate Part 1 rebuttal Sean or something, you'd find it. But I don't know, it's kind of interesting.
Okay, we might look into it if I have time.
Okay, cool. Well, it was nice talking to you.
Yep,
I'll think more about the issue. All right,
don't,
bye.
but I love you. Bye. He will say that the only possible way you can disprove anything he's saying is if his members go out and start murdering people. So I mean, you're